Welcome back to the Sheep in the Meadow podcast. Today we have a guest, Mr. Patten. Very excited to have him on the podcast. He's been dying to be on the podcast for a little while
Luke,
now.
Thanks so much for having me, Brian.
Of course. First, we're going to acknowledge the piece of art that we have behind us for this episode. My grandma who lives in Florida, she's like a big artist. That's how she likes to occupy her time. Okay. So she asked me what I would want. I think this was made, she made this to 2023. I think it says 2015 under there. So that was 8 years ago. So I was 8 or 9. And she asked me what I wanted. And I was like, LeBrons. Because I guess it was like, those were huge back when I was a kid. So I was like, I want a pair of LeBrons. And she's like, okay, I'll make it. And that's what she made.
Dude, she's got some talent, man.
Some talent, a little something. But I that's one of the things I hang up in my room. Love it,
Dude, whenever you could have those items that are passed down from generation to generation or made for you from a generation, they're priceless. That's awesome, man.
I appreciate it. So, Mr. Patten, what are some of the classes you teach here at MEPM?
I teach currently this year. I teach 9th and 10th grade global history. I teach participation in government for the seniors. And I'm currently teaching for the first time ever AP Human Geography.
So this is your first AP class?
Yeah.
Now, how is that?
I think they're going to realize that maybe I'm not the kind of guy that I should be teaching APs. But my son had taken AP Human Geography last year in Massapequa, and the class rocked him. It was his favorite class. He was challenged. He got his butt kicked, but he did really well in the class, and I just respected so much how hard he worked. So when it was offered here at MEPM, they asked me if, after 20 years of teaching, would I be up for a challenge? So I said, well, if my boy could do it, I was proud of him, I'm going to do it too.
So how do you think you're doing teaching that class right now?
No comment. No comment. It's definitely been challenging trying to get, making sure that I have the resources prepared the right way, the materials the right way, and preparing them for that, AP exam for those kids to do well on it.
Of course. Ms. Patten, you're very well known around the school, mostly as, one of the teachers that every student feels like they can go to, talk to you about anything. I remember we had this conversation before. Do you think that comes with challenges too? Like that puts pressure on you as a teacher, but also as a friend, making yourself available to your students? I
think it is challenging at times, but then, now 20 years into my career now, I think of things a little different. And a lot of the things I think of, with my own 2 children come first. And it was like, I just kind of hope I could be the person that, my kids had at school. That if my kids had a hard day, if my kids had troubles, who would be that teacher that I hope that they would have that person to go to at school. So same thing here, in 20 years, we've had kids, you never know what kids are going through, whether they have a good day or a bad day, and if you could be the one that's there to support them, you know what I mean? I think that's half of what we try to do here at Bellmore-Merrick at Mepham High School. Can we make that difference?
Do you think that having kids made you a nicer, more friendly student, teacher?
No, I think I would just I think the one thing I always say about teachers is you can't be anybody else. As great as Mr. Russell is, I can't be Matt Russell, and Matt Russell can't be me. As amazing as Stu Stein, Lisa Kalish is, Jackie Geller, the list goes on and on. Mm-hmm. They are who they are because of what they do, and they're not trying to be me and I'm not trying to be them. So I think that, the Chris Patten that the kids know at school is the same Chris Patten that is with his kids, Connor and Kara, the same Chris that's with his wife, his friends, when I coached, so it's suited me well as an educator. That person who I am has been accepted in the classroom and works in the classroom.
What sports did you coach?
I coached the Bellmore-Merrick Bulldogs hockey program for 12 years.
Really?
Yeah, so when the Bellmore, people don't know this a lot of times, the Bellmore-Merrick Bulldogs used to be a private club owned by the parents and run by the parents. It wasn't school sanctioned. And a man by the name of Bob Youngling brought it to the board and fought to get the Bellmore-Merrick Bulldogs accepted as a school-sponsored club. So, but Bellmore-Merrick wanted a teacher to coach. Mm-hmm. So after founding the program, Bob passed it to me, and I took over the program. I think it was in like 07, 08, something like that.
Oh, wow.
And then I ran it all the way through, I think it was 2018. So it was probably one of the greatest highlights of my teaching career. So it was amazing.
What successes and accomplishments did you have with those teams?
Oh my God! I think just the relationships you established with the boys, leaving Mepham at 2:15, like on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and being at Newbridge Arena at 2:20, and the rink was empty and it was cold, and the smell just hit your nostrils, and then the boys would come in, and we would have practice. I mean, it was amazing, you know. And then in 2011, we were state finalists. We made it all the way. We went up to Buffalo, made it to the state finals, which was amazing, and lost in overtime, which was crushing, but it was still amazing to get that far. In, you know, I think it was 2012, we made it to the semifinals in states. And then finally in 2016, we won Nassau County Championship. We went 20-0 that year.
Wow.
We beat Long Beach in Long Beach Arena in overtime on a penalty shot.
Yeah, that must have.
It was wild. There was
I was
like
gonna say.
5,000 people there. Like, it was insane.
That's insane. Do you think that you like could name your best player that you've
Tommy
seen?
Condon.
Who?
Tommy Condon. He was
Really?
the best player that I ever coached.
Uh-huh.
Tommy Condon.
Why?
Tommy Condon was the most beautiful thing you would ever see. He had long flowing hair, so when he zooted around the ice, the hair, the flow, the mullet was hanging out the back. But Tommy worked harder than everyone. And the things that Tommy was able to do, like I used to say my fantasies were never that good because I never fantasized the things that Tommy did on the ice were even possible. So
Wow.
Tommy, you know, Tommy and John Olson were instrumental in that 2016 Nassau County Championship. And Tommy actually asked me, he was like, you know, if we win this championship, the first ever in school history, there still hasn't been another Nassau County Championship since then. He asked me, would I get the Bulldogs tattooed? And so because of Tommy Condon, I have a Bulldogs tattooed to commemorate the 2016 championship team.
That's actually insane.
Yeah, it was
that's insane.
It was pretty awesome.
Where's the tattoo?
So my leg.
Dude, that's keeping your words to another level. Tattoo.
Yeah, I mean, but like, you know, the Bulldogs was an extension of the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And Mepham and the Bulldogs, this place is family. You
Yeah.
know, so when I moved down here from Boston, it was like all I had was my girlfriend, who is now my wife, and her parents. And I always said that I did not want my wife's parents to be my only best friends. You know, as much as I love them too.
Of course.
But I needed to build up my community outside of Boston. I needed to build it here. So, you know, Mepham and the Bulldogs, it was family.
That's really cool. So where did you grow up? Because I know you're from Boston, but
Yep.
did you grew up in Boston too?
I grew up in like, you know, I grew up in an area of Boston called West Roxbury. So you think of New York City. New York City has the 5 boroughs.
Right.
You know, so I kind of lived in what would the equivalent be to like Queens. You know, it was in the greater Boston, you know, the city limits, but it was an area called West Roxbury. It was a great upbringing, you know, had a mom and father, you know, Irish Catholic neighborhood. And, you know, and then everything went from there. I went to a private school called Severian Brothers. And then from there, I went to BU.
How long did you live in Boston for?
I lived in Boston until, I graduated college. So I went to BU for a year and a half and then left there and then went to UMass Boston, finished off there.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, I got hired in New York City as a teacher.
Nice. So you coached the hockey team.
Mm-hmm.
You grew up in Boston.
Yep.
So if I had to guess, you played hockey when you were younger or
I
no?
did.
You
I did. It was, you know, growing up in Boston, you know, we were a product of what happened in the 70s and 80s in Boston with Boston Bruins hockey.
Yep.
You had Bobby Orr and you had Cam Neely and Ray Bork, you know, and because of players like that, rinks were popping up everywhere in Boston. Every town had a rink. So you grew up just skating and you grew up playing and, you know, went from playing youth hockey to, you know, high school hockey at the private school for a while. And then it was just like the competition just got better and better and it was just something that you loved.
So like the era that you grew up in, that was when hockey was becoming more popularized in your area.
Yep, big time.
That's crazy. Did you ever face like you're a big sports guy, right? I know you're a big sports guy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you ever face backlash for being a Boston fan in New York?
All the time.
Yeah,
all the time. Like, you think about my first year here at Mepham was '04. The Red Sox won the first World Series in '04, and I had little dirtbag kids like writing in their homework assignments, Red Sox stink. You know what I mean? And I'm like, you know what? Thinking I'm not going to read it. I'm like, you know what? You stink, kid. You know, and I had -5 points.
Was that the year? That was the year that the Yankees were up.
Yep.
They were up 3-0 or 3-1 in the series,
Bro,
right?
Yankees were up 3-0. It was going to be a sweep. And then next thing you know, keep believing in Boston. Keep believing in Boston.
Was that also the same year where, I forgot the Red Sox name, but the pitcher, he was bleeding on his ankle?
Kurt Schilling.
Yeah, that was
Bloody
that.
sock.
That was that, right?
Yep. So you're talking about, like, I had to leave Boston for all this great stuff to happen.
Uh-huh.
You're talking about, 6 Super Bowls, 3 or 4 World Series, a Stanley Cup,
Yeah.
an NBA championship. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, all that happened while I was down here. So that was, like, amazing, but it was also sad, too, because I didn't have my father with me. I didn't have my best friends with me. You know what I mean? Like, it was just different.
Yeah. And obviously, I mean, you probably know this. You have a thick Boston accent.
I didn't notice. I actually was going to comment on your accent that you sound stupid.
Now, like, to me, I would think you've been living in New York for how many years now?
Since '02.
So that's 21 years.
Yeah, it's a long
So
time.
you've been living in New York longer than you've been living in
Listen,
Boston?
I don't think it's technical yet, but the day is coming where
Yeah.
I am going to be living on this island longer than I ever lived in my beloved Boston.
I would think that you would develop a Long Island accent
No,
at this
but like
point.
I tell you what, my kids and some friends and family and even students rip on me now. They're like, "You're losing your accent."
Oh, really?
They say it to me all the time, and I don't think so. And I actually think it's like the meanest thing that anyone could ever say to me, that I'm losing my accent. But I don't think it's an accent. It's just the way that.
Well, I feel like it's part of who you are.
Yeah.
You know, exactly. So do your kids have a Long Island accent?
They have a Long Island accent, but my daughter, Kara, who's like magical, she can put on a Boston accent like that.
I feel like that's one of the hardest accents to like reenact.
No,
reenact.
just ka.
I know.
Try
that's
it.
Whenever
Try it, Luke. Ka.
Okay. Ka.
Ka. You got it.
Ka.
Stop.
Whenever
Stop.
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 Faker.
Faker.
Faker. You being a faker.
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 Or
Like if I was gonna take you to the bakery after this and buy you a cookie, what do you call those cookies that are chocolate on one side and vanilla on the other side?
black and white.
No, stop. It's a half moon.
That's what they call it in Boston.
Think about it. Close your eyes. Think of it. What does it look like?
Half moon.
Looks like a half moon.
I didn't know that they even like called things differently over there.
Yeah,
Okay,
dude.
so in Boston, do they call soda soda or they call
Yeah,
it
I
pop?
call it tonic.
Tonic?
Tonic. Like if I wanted a Pepsi or a Coke, I'd be like, I need a tonic.
See, I didn't know because in most other states they call it pop.
Yeah, no, we call it a tonic.
That's weird. I didn't know that.
If we were in New York City and we wanted to take the transportation system from one area of Manhattan to another, what would you call that?
Subway.
Yeah, we call it the T.
Why?
Think about it. It's transportation, right?
So train T or
Yeah, the T.
transportation. That's interesting, man.
Yeah, dude.
I would have never thought that.
And just like how you go to the delis, what do you order? Like
A sandwich,
Right.
bacon, egg, and cheese, stuff like
yeah,
that.
stuff like that. We don't got no bacon, egg, and cheese up in Boston.
Yeah, but you still got like good bagels and stuff like that.
No, we don't got good bagels. Dunkin'
Really?
Donuts bagels. Bagels.
Bagels.
Bagels. B-A-G, bag-els, E-L. Bagels. But then like I would say I want a sub.
Okay, but I feel like that's more like if you were to walk into a New York deli and I want a sub, I feel like they'd be like, okay.
Yeah, but you don't call them subs.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
get it.
So like I think that's always the fun conversation. And especially like when you guys go to college. You know, if you go to college outside of New York, you're going to be the foreigner.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, just like I never was a foreigner until I came down here. And it's like, oh my God, what are you even saying? You know?
Whenever I think of a Boston accent, or really just the city of Boston, I think of like prestigious colleges.
I actually used to work at Harvard.
Really?
Yeah. I was
Actually?
I was like Goodwill Hunting. My father was.
I was gonna say that's when I think of Boston accents. I think of Goodwill Hunting.
Yeah,
And I
how do you
think
like
of
them
Matt
apples?
Damon. Yeah,
There
exactly.
you go. So when I grew up, I said I grew up in Boston. My father was a painter. He was a contractor. So he had 2 major contracts. One was at Harvard University, and the other was at Reebok's corporate office. So like I used to, all through the summers as a kid, all in high school, I would paint at Harvard University. And then when I left BU and I went to UMass Boston, I would go to UMass Boston to go to school 2 days a week, and I would paint as a painter the other 5 days a week to pay for myself going to the school. And you would paint at Harvard University. I would paint at Divinity School, Harvard School of Law, School of Government, all these type of things. And they were awesome. And you'd walk around and be like, yeah, I could go here. And you'd be like, you'd see a book on the ground that a kid leave in the dorm. And I go, I think I'm going to read that book. And everyone would be like, you ain't reading that book. So we used to pretend we were Goodwill Hunting all the time.
That's hilarious. Because like as soon as I hear Boston, I think of Goodwill Hunting.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the first thing that comes to my mind.
Absolutely.
You're also a very predominant piece in the whole St. Baldrick's put together.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get into that?
I think that if you ask my partner and best friend, Kerry Dennis, we ran into a situation that the participation in government actually has a service requirement that kids used to have to do 10 hours of like documented community service. Mm-hmm. And that was the assignment in the project when we came here to Mepham. Mm-hmm. And kids would have to go find their own place to do service. And then what happened was kids were making up their service. They were saying like, oh, I worked at this shelter. And you'd call the shelter and they'd be like, I don't know who you're talking about. And we actually had one kid one time said that he worked at Long Island Jewish Medical Center, and he wrote down that like he was teaching, students that were visually impaired how to read. I was like, are you kidding me? And I called up and it was his friend's number. Oh. So like Dennis and I were like, or kids would say the worst thing, I worked at the Goodwill store and no one came in. I didn't make a difference. Or I worked at my synagogue, temple, or mosque as a Sunday school aide, or, as a person helping out there, and I didn't interact with anybody until the kids went to the bathroom and I didn't make a difference. And it was like, wait, either kids are making something up or they don't feel like they're making a difference. So Dennis and I were like, we have to provide these kids opportunities that they can feel like one person can make a difference and many people together can make great change happen. So we invented the Service Learning Projects, and it was, we would do a project in the fall with the fall seniors, and we'd do a project in the spring with the spring seniors. And at first we were just kind of going off the cusp of our pants, just trying to figure everything out. And a lot of the projects either dealt with children or military. Mm-hmm. And so one thing led to another. One of my old co-teaching partners, Mara Kempton, had brought St. Baldrick's here, and it was a huge success. And then it was like shelved. It went away. So Dennis and I were like, why don't we bring back what Mara Kempton, who's at central offices right now, why don't we bring back the success that they had with it, and we'll do it with our seniors. And then one thing led to another, and next thing you know, it just spun out of control. And then, when we actually wondered a couple times, should we even keep doing it? And one of our seniors was stated by saying, we have to keep doing it because we haven't ended childhood cancer yet. And then I think the connection with St. Baldrick's also with Mepham's other favorite person, Jackie Geller, mm-hmm. with her family's history in Juliana, then it became like, we're going to do this for Gigi. And then it became, just a staple at the school, and the kids really got behind the cause.
Yeah, I think it's definitely the most, in my opinion, I think that the St. Baldrick's event is the most popular event that Mepham holds mm-hmm. at the school, other than like plays and sports games and stuff like that.
I think it's amazing too because it's like student run. Yeah. So as the years have gone by, more and more, you'll see less and less of Dennis and I, and it's more and more of like you hosting the event, students singing the national anthem, kids emceeing it, kids cutting the hair, you know what I mean? Kids' performances, with Skull and Bones and all that kind of stuff. And it's amazing to see what young people can do given the opportunities.
Mm-hmm. You also like to perform with your bagpipes there, don't you?
I do. I joined a bagpipe band a couple of years ago as the next chapter of my life. And, that's been funny, and fun having the kids see me do something that I'm a part of.
How did you get into playing the bagpipes?
As a kid in Boston, you heard bagpipes everywhere.
Really?
Yeah. Boston was like an Irish Catholic neighborhood.
Yeah.
So, again, like it was a great way to grow up. But I didn't really get accustomed to diversity and seeing diversity until I went to college. Mm-hmm. And it was awesome. Like I was in Indian fashion shows. Like I had friends from, Afghanistan. Like, it was great to see the world. And you could see that once I went to college. So, but the bagpipes were always, there. And what happened was I had a friend of mine that had passed away. His name was Malcolm. Malcolm was like 85 years old. And he used to do the glasses for my kids. And I knew his family and I knew his children. And he kept telling me that I should come down and join the American Legion pipe band. And I was like, Malcolm, I'm 40 years old. Like, I can't join a band. I've never played an instrument. I can't read music. I know nothing. He goes, it will all be taken care of. So on Tuesday nights, I used to go pick up my 85-year-old friend, Malcolm, from his house. And it was guys' night out. And we would go down to the American Legion, and I would meet all these guys. And they slowly, taught me how to play the bagpipes. And then I would drop Malcolm off, and one thing led to another, and 1 month turned into 6 months, turned into a year, turned into I bought pipes, turned into I passed my piper's exam, turned into I can play probably anywhere from 10 to 15 tunes on the pipes.
I didn't know that you had to pass an exam for playing.
Again, it's an American Legion band. It's all volunteer. Which is great, but also, too, they got to make sure that when you're going to performances and you're going to a funeral, you're going on to a parade, whatever it is, that you can play certain things and you're not just like, which is what they basically sound like. So, once I got it going, I passed my test, and then I could walk on the street and march on the street, and it was something cool. And I always just thought that the bagpipes would be something that I did for fun at, someone's backyard or something. I never thought the bagpipes would take me anywhere. So the bagpipes have taken me to New York City to do St. Patrick's Day parades. It's taken me to Montauk to do celebrations out there. It's taken me to presidential commencements at Stony Brook University, where I've played for the president of the university. And it's taken me to France.
What? France?
Yeah. Bonjour.
That's sick.
So we were the official band of the 79th commencement of D-Day in France.
Oh, wow.
So we played on Omaha Beach, which from D-Day.
Yeah.
We played at some American cemeteries, Normandy and Brittany American Cemetery. We played at St. Mary's Église, which was the first town liberated by the Americans after the invasion. And, me and my father went over there with the American Legion Band, and we played. And it was kind of wild to think that a guy that still can't read music, and has to write A, B, C's, and D's over all the little dots, went to France.
That's really cool. That's really cool. The final thing I wanted to ask you, one of my friends, two of my friends really, told me at the same time, Vin Azaridi and Anthony Saragusa, as you may know them. They told me that the way that you got your job was because you said, good morning, how are you, to the lady before your interview, right?
True story.
So that is a true story.
True story.
Can you just run us through that story one more time?
I always say, treat people the way that people should be treated. So I was a non-certified teacher. I never student taught. I never did anything. I had education classes, and I was at the Brooklyn Marriott for a job fair, and they weren't going to let me in because I wasn't certified. And I went outside, and I'm crying to my girlfriend, who's now my wife, and I'm like, they're not going to let me in. They're not going to let me in. And she goes, you go back there and you tell them. So I went back there, and I was like, Joel Klein says I could be here. And the guy's like, the Chancellor of Education? And I go, yeah. And they're like, go ahead, kid. Good luck. So I walked in there, and it was like a cattle call. So you think of a big conference hall. They had tables set up everywhere, and every table represented a school in New York City. So, and then there were people walking around with clipboards, and you would go up to that person, you would tell them what your subject area was, and they would say, go to this table, go to that table. They need an English teacher, they need a math teacher. And you would go over there and kind of have a quick interview, and if they could place you there, they could place you there. But I noticed that everyone would go up to the woman with the clipboard and was very rude. I'm English. I'm math. Almost discrediting this person like they were nobody.
Yeah.
So I walked up to the woman, And I go, hey, how are you today? That's it. And she goes, what? I go, ma'am, I was just saying hello. How's your day going? And she goes, you're the first person that asked me that. And I go, well, I hope I'm not the last. How are you? She goes, I'm good. Thank you very much. She goes, how can I help you? And I go, I'm social studies. She goes, go over to that table. So I go over to the table, and the woman goes, my school is filled with criminals, drug addicts, and people from Rikers Island. If you're interested, I will be back in a minute. Good luck. So I stood there, and I waited for her to come back. And she goes, you're still here? And I go, it sounds like a great place that I can make a difference with children. So she goes, meet me tomorrow at Long Island City. So I go to the superintendent's building, which was Long Island City, and I'm standing there, and they were like, I don't know if we can hire you. You're not certified. You have no student teaching experience. You have nothing. I had my bachelor's degree. That's it. So next thing you know, the woman with the clipboard comes walking out of an office, and she's like, Chris. I was like, hey, Carol. And I remembered her name. Her name was Carol Gambello. And I go, Carol, how are you? She goes, do you have a job yet? And I was like, no, I don't know if this is going to work out. She goes, hang on a second. She goes into the office. 2 minutes later, she comes out with a piece of paper, and she goes, you're going to report to the South Bronx Project Blend. Good luck. And I was like, Carol, I've been here all day. How did, and I was like lost for words, like, how did that happen? And she goes, oh, I didn't tell you yesterday. She goes, like, I'm the assistant superintendent of personnel of this district.
Wow.
She goes, you can learn a lot about a person by carrying a clipboard. Best of luck.
That's insane, dude.
So it was like a crazy experience that, like, I was a nobody. I was a kid. I didn't have the right credentials, and all I knew how to do was say hi. And that story kind of resonated without my career, that I acknowledged her, and I was going to continue to acknowledge my students, my coworkers, and just, you know, it worked out. 20-something years later, they haven't fired me yet.
And I don't think they will.
Maybe someday.
But I think that's really all the time that we have here for the rest of the show. I want to thank Mr. Patten for coming on. I really appreciate you coming.
Thank you for your time, man. I appreciate you.
Thank you for yours. So until the next episode, thanks for watching.